as if he was joking. "Believe me, I've thought about it. It's just too risky. People would go to jail." Vandermeer stopped smiling. "We have to win, Rankin. You understand? We have to win. Spend whatever it takes." With the jury exhausted by sequestration, Durwood Cable didn't want to extend the case. He'd cut his list of witnesses to 5, and he'd planned for their testimony to run for no more than 4 days. In the afternoon, Jankel was questioned by Wendell Rohr. Rohr started with a vicious question, and things went from bad to worse. "Isn't it true, Mr. Jankel, that your company spends hundreds of millions of dollars trying to persuade people to smoke, but when they get sick, your company won't pay a dime to help them?" Jankel said something that no one could hear. "I'm sorry, Mr. Jankel, I didn't hear that. When was the last time—" "I heard the question. I can't recall one." "So you say that cigarettes don't cause sickness?" "Only if they're abused." "So tell us, please, Mr. Jankel, how does one abuse a cigarette?" "By smoking too much." "And how much is too much?" "I'd say more than 2 packs a day." Rohr spoke more softly. "Will you describe to the jury how you have warned the public that smoking more than 40 cigarettes a day is dangerous?" The damage was done, but Rohr saved the best moment until the end. He showed a video of Jankel, together with the other CEOs, giving evidence before a group of politicians. One by one, they were asked if nicotine was addictive. They all clearly said no. Jankel was last, and when he made his angry denial, the jury knew he was lying. Fitch and Cable had a tense meeting. Fitch was bothered about Jankel's defense. Cable, who didn't like being criticized by a non-lawyer, whom he hated anyway, explained that they'd begged Jankel not to talk about cigarette abuse. Fitch thought the jury might be tired of Cable. Why couldn't another defense lawyer talk to a few witnesses? There were a lot of them. Fitch and Cable shouted at each other across a desk. After they'd both tried to become calmer, they did agree that the defense should be brief and last no more than 3 days. Fitch banged the door shut as he left the office. In his car, Fitch read faxes. There was a summary of the investigations into Claire Clement in Kansas. The car went past a store, and Fitch suddenly wanted a beer. He was an ex-alcoholic and hadn't had a drink for 9 years. He knew that if he had one drink, he'd go on drinking. He stopped thinking about beer. Where was Marlee? And why hadn't she called? He closed his eyes, thought of the jurors, and dreamed of Marlee. Derek chose a different place for his meeting with Cleve. It was a bar in the black section of Biloxi. Cleve insisted that they meet in the parking lot first. He arrived late. "I don't think this is a good idea," Cleve said. "I'm the only white face here, and you expect me to go into the bar with $5,000 and hand it over to you? If you want the money, meet me at the Waffle House." Sitting in the Waffle House, they drank coffee. Derek was nervous as he spoke. "So I'm thinking the $10,000 isn't enough, know what I mean?" "I thought we had a deal," said Cleve, showing no emotion. "Things are different now. I want $50,000, plus a percentage of the sum of money that the plaintiff gets. I think 10% would be fair." "Oh, you do? You're crazy. We made a deal for $10,000. Anything larger and we'll be caught." Cleve got up and hurried out to the parking lot. Derek ran after him and caught up with Cleve in his car. Cleve got out, lit a cigarette, and looked at Derek. "Look, What I'm offering you is illegal. Don't get greedy. If you do, you'll be caught. But if you offer a percentage, Angel will work harder to persuade the other jurors to decide on a large sum of money. You don't understand. If there's a verdict for the plaintiff, it'll be years before the money's actually paid. Take the money. Talk to Angel. $25,000 per vote. Per vote? Sure. Angel can deliver more than one. Cleve finished his cigarette. I'll have to talk to my boss. It was time for personal visits at the Siesta Motel. Hoppy had arrived early with some Chinese food and a bottle of wine. He and Millie made love and then talked about the kids. Hoppy spoke sadly about her absence. Everyone missed her. He dressed and turned on the television. You're not gonna believe this, he said, taking a piece of paper out of his pocket. What is it? Said Millie, taking the paper and reading it. It was a copy of the document which Fitch's people had written, with false information about Leon Robilio. Millie looked suspiciously at her husband. Where did you get this? She demanded. Who sent it? Don't know. Looks like it came from Washington. Hoppy hated lying to Millie, but Napier and Nitchman were out there somewhere, just waiting. Why didn't you just throw it away? I don't know. You know it's wrong to show me stuff like this, Hoppy. Millie threw the paper on the bed and walked closer to her husband. What are you trying to do? Nothing. Somebody just faxed it to my office, that's all. What? Somebody knew your fax number? Knew that your wife was on the jury? Knew that Leon Robilio testified? And that person also thought that you'd be stupid enough to try to influence me? I want to know what's going on. Nothing, I swear, said Hoppy. Why have you taken such a sudden interest in the case? I can tell when something's bothering you, Hoppy. Nothing, relax. This case is difficult for both of us. I'm sorry I showed you it. Millie finished the wine and sat on the bed. Hoppy sat next to her. Mr. Cristano had suggested that Millie showed the document to all of her friends on the jury. Hoppy didn't know how to tell Mr. Cristano that this wouldn't happen. As he thought about this, Millie started crying. I want to go home, she said with red eyes. Hoppy put his arm round her and squeezed tightly. I'm sorry, he said. She cried even harder. Hoppy felt like crying too. The meeting hadn't been successful. The trial would end soon. He had to persuade Millie to vote for a defense verdict. Hoppy would be forced to tell Millie the truth. Not tonight, but surely during the next personal visit. Chapter 11. A Juror's Dismissal. Colonel Herrera's routine never varied. He got up at exactly 5:30, did his exercises, and took a cold shower. At 6, he had breakfast in the motel dining room. At 8, he returned to his room. At 6:15 on Thursday morning, Nicholas greeted the colonel in the dining room and had a brief conversation about the weather. He then went quietly down the hall, took a pile of newspapers from a drawer in his room, and used a key he'd stolen from the front desk to enter the colonel's room. He put the pile of newspapers and magazines under the colonel's bed. One was a copy of yesterday's Mogul. He went to his room and phoned Marlee. Marlee called Fitch. Hey, Fitch. Go to the middle payphone at the corner of 14th and Beach Drive. I'll call in 7 minutes. Damn it! Fitch screamed. He shouted for Jose, and they rushed to his car. The phone was ringing as they got there. Hey, Fitch. Juror number 7, Herrera, is really annoying, Nick. I think we'll lose him today. Don't do it, Marlee. He's on our side. Oh, Fitch, they'll all be on our side when it's over. Anyway, be in court at 9 to see what happens. Fitch controlled himself and walked calmly to the car. Whatever she wanted. It didn't matter. Judge Harkin lived in Gulfport, 15 minutes from the courthouse. As he was getting ready to leave for the courthouse, the phone rang. "Judge, I'm sorry to bother you at home," said a nervous voice. "It's Nicholas Easter." "What's the matter?" The judge wondered how Nicholas had obtained his phone number, but said nothing. "It's about Herrera," Nicholas said. "I think maybe he's reading things that aren't on the approved list. This morning, when I went into the dining room, he was there alone, and he tried to hide a copy of Mogul from me. Isn't that some kind of business magazine?" "Yes, it is," replied Harkin. If Easter was telling the truth, and why should he doubt him, then Herrera would be sent home immediately. The reading of any unauthorized material meant dismissal. "Do you think he's discussed it with anyone else?" "I doubt it. Like I said, he was trying to hide it from me. But I'll listen carefully." "You do that. I'll ask Colonel Herrera to come in and see me this morning. We'll probably search his room." "Please don't tell him I reported him. I really feel bad about doing it." "It's okay. The trial's almost over, Nicholas. I'm asking the lawyers to be as quick as they possibly can." On his way to the court, Harkin called the sheriff and asked him to go to the Siesta Motel and wait. He then called Lou Dell, who told him that Mogul wasn't sold at the motel. He wondered how a sequestered juror could have got a copy of it. When Harkin arrived in court, he told Rohr and Cable what he'd learned, without telling them who'd told him. Both lawyers were unhappy. Cable was annoyed because everyone thought that Herrera would vote with the defense. Rohr was cross because they were going to lose a juror, and there was a danger the trial might have to be repeated. Herrera was called to the judge's chambers, where he was told he had to answer some questions. He felt like a criminal. "Have you been reading any materials not specifically authorized by me, in particular a business weekly magazine called Mogul?" asked the judge. "Not since I've been sequestered," Herrera replied. "Will you agree to a search of your room?" The colonel went red. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. "I have reason to believe that you have been reading unauthorized materials at the motel. I think a search of your room would settle the matter," replied the judge. Herrera knew there was nothing in his room. "Then search it," he said between his teeth. In the motel, the sheriff and 2 deputies found the newspapers and magazines under Herrera's bed. They took them to the judge's chambers. The judge showed them to Herrera. "These items were found under the bed in room 50 just minutes ago." Herrera was speechless. "They're not mine," he said angrily. "Somebody must have put them there. The fact is that these were found in your room. I have no choice. You are dismissed from jury service." There were many questions Herrera wanted to ask, but he suddenly realized he'd be on the golf course by lunchtime. "Whatever you say, Judge." The jurors took their seats a few minutes after 10. In the courtroom, the jury watched silently as Judge Harkin showed them a copy of Mogul. He asked if anyone had read it or heard what was in it. No one. "Juror number 7, Frank Herrera, has been dismissed and replaced by the extra juror, Mr. Henry Vu." Fitch's newspaper dropped several inches as he stared at the new juror. He was scared because Herrera had gone, and thrilled because his girl Marley had done exactly what she'd promised. Fitch looked at Easter, who stared back. Cable's first witness on Thursday was Dr. Denise McQuaid. The defense wanted to answer Leon Robilio's claims that kids were targeted by the cigarette industry. Dr. McQuaid was beautiful and clever. She'd written 4 books and many articles. She quickly made her point. Advertising is everywhere. Children are familiar with commercials for all kinds of things that kids eat and drink, like hamburgers and soft drinks. No one accuses those companies of dishonestly targeting the young. Dr. McQuaid's testimony made perfect sense to the jury. Rohr spent his lunch hour with Cleve, discussing what they should do about Derek. "This is what we'll do," said Rohr. "We'll give him $15,000 now, and the other 10 after the verdict. We'll promise him $25,000 for the other votes. We'll also record the interview. If we get our verdict, we won't pay, and if he causes problems, we'll threaten to call in the FBI." "I like it," Cleve said. "Get the cash. You must see him this afternoon." Cleve met him in a cheap bar. But Derek had other plans. He wanted Angel's $25,000 in cash now, and he also wanted an advance payment for each of the other jurors. $80,000 in cash now. "You're crazy," Cleve said. "And you're a crook," replied Derek. "There's no way we can pay $80,000 cash." "Fine. I'll go to the tobacco company." "You do that," said Cleve. On Thursday morning, the search for Claire had a small success. They got information about another friend of Claire's. Her name was Beverly Monk, and she lived in Greenwich Village in New York. Swanson flew to New York and phoned her, pretending to be Nicholas. He'd practiced imitating Nicholas's voice many times. "It's Jeff Kerr." "Oh, yes." Maybe she remembered him, maybe she didn't. "I'm in the city, and I wondered if you'd heard from Claire recently. I'm looking for her." "I haven't talked to Claire in 4 years. Look, I'm real busy now." "Sure." Swanson called Fitch. They decided to offer Beverly Monk cash. Fitch knew Marlee would ring on Friday morning. "Hi, Fitch. Lonnie Shaver's bothering Nicholas." "Oh, damn. No, you can't do that. You've got to stop this, Marlee." Fitch was aware of how desperate he sounded. "Don't do it, please. Let's talk about this." "We'll meet in an hour. Fulton Street, number 120. Fitch walked to Fulton Street. He went alone. "Are we ready to talk money?" he asked with a nasty grin. "Yes. You send me $10 million before the verdict." "You must be joking." She never stopped looking at him. $10 million, Fitch. And there's no discussion. How much is in the fund?" "The what?" he said. No one knew about the fund. "Don't play games, Fitch. I want $10 million sent to a bank in Singapore before the jury withdraws to discuss their verdict. Otherwise, the deal's off." "What happens if the deal's off?" "One of two things. Either Nicholas will split the jury, or he'll persuade it to vote 9 votes to 3 for the plaintiff." The game was over. She was in control. "So we have a deal?" "Yes," said Fitch. They shook hands. Swanson approached Beverly Monk in a corner coffee shop. "Excuse me, are you Beverly Monk?" She looked up, surprised, and said, "Yes, who are you?" "A friend of Claire Clement's." "What do you want?" She was nervous, but the shop was crowded. "You called me yesterday, didn't you?" "Yes, I did. I lied. I said I was Jeff Kerr. I'm not. I'm Jack Swanson. I work for some lawyers in Washington." "Is Claire in trouble?" "No." Swanson gave a quick explanation of Claire's summons to jury service for a huge trial in the future. "We'll pay for information," he said. "How much?" $1,000 cash to tell me everything you know about Claire Clement." Swanson took out an envelope and placed it on the table. Beverly stared at it, then grabbed it and put it in her purse.
"There's not much to tell," she said. "I worked with her for 6 months. Then I left town. I called her once or twice, then we lost contact."
"Where did she go to college?"
"Somewhere in the Midwest. Claire was a very secretive person. She didn't talk about her past. I didn't ask."
Swanson thanked her. As he was leaving, she offered to make a few phone calls. She obviously wanted more money. Swanson said fine and gave her his business card. Hoppy sat in the back of a long black Chrysler car with Mr. Cristano. Nitchman and Napier were in the front. Hoppy had met with Nitchman and Napier the day before and admitted that Millie hadn't reacted too well to the document. "When do you see her again?" Cristano asked.
"Tonight, I think."
"The time has come, Hoppy, for you to tell her the truth." Hoppy's eyes watered as he stared out the window. He cursed himself for his stupidity. If he had a gun, he could almost shoot Todd Ringwald and Jimmy Hull Moak. He could definitely shoot himself.
"I guess so,"
he whispered. "You'll have to tell her that if she doesn't support the defense's case, you will go to prison for 5 years. Hoppy started crying. In the front, Nitchman grinned. Chapter 12. Hoppy Dupree's Confession. Fitch met with Marlee an hour after the previous meeting ended. "How much does Roar know?" he asked.
"He knows nothing. We never met. I made you think I'd met him, but it never happened."
"Promise me you won't get rid of Lonnie Shaver," Fitch said.
"Tell me why. If we're working for the same verdict, then we have to be honest."
"All I can say is that Lonnie's been bought and paid for. How many votes does Nicholas have now?"
"He'll have 9 votes before the jury withdraws, maybe more. He just needs a bit of help with a few, like Ricky Coleman, for instance."
"We might have some information about her."
"You keep playing games, so will I. What about Millie Dupree?"
Nicholas had noticed Hoppy's sudden interest in the trial, and he and Marlee had their suspicions that Fitch was trying to use Hoppy to persuade Millie. Fitch decided to be cautious. "Nothing on Millie," he said. They discussed the other jurors briefly. Marlee asked for another $25,000 to bribe Jerry Fernandez and another juror, then gave new instructions for the transfer of the $10 million. The meeting was over. Later on Friday, Fitch instructed each of the Big Four CEOs to send $2 million each to the fund immediately. There was no time for explanations. He then transferred $10 million from the fund's bank account to a new account which he opened in the Netherlands Antilles. By Friday evening, it was all done. At first, Fitch was relieved, but he knew his work wasn't finished. He didn't know the real Marlee and why she was doing this. Fitch didn't like the unknown. He soon became angry and worried again. At 8 on Friday evening, Derek went to Durwood Cable's office. He was nervous, and when he asked for a Mr. Gable by mistake, he was told that no one of that name worked there. In court, Judge Harkin was worried about the jury. It was 5 on Friday. They were bored and tired. The lawyers were worried too. The jurors weren't reacting to testimony as they should be. They were staring blankly into space or trying to stay awake. Nicholas wanted the jurors to be tired. They'd listen to him more willingly. He persuaded all the jurors to sign a letter to Judge Harkin asking for the trial to continue on Saturday. Judge Harkin agreed. "The trial should be over Monday afternoon," he said. "We'll have closing arguments on Monday morning, and you'll receive the case before noon. That's the best I can do." There were smiles from the jury. With the end in sight, they could manage one more weekend together. There would be personal visits tonight, tomorrow night, and Sunday. Hoppy arrived in Millie's room late. He sat on her bed and put his face in his hands.
"What's the matter, Hoppy?"
she asked, frightened. He finally told her. Mr. Todd Ringwald, Stillwater Bay, Jimmy Hull Moke, Napier, Nitchman, and the tape. How could he have been so stupid? Millie began crying. But there was more. When he got to the part where he did a deal with Mr. Cristano, Millie stopped crying.
"But I'm not sure I want to vote for the tobacco company," she said.
"Wake up, Millie. If you don't, I go to prison for 5 years.
"That's not fair."
Millie was shocked. "What about the kids?" Hoppy asked. He'd planned his arguments in advance. Millie felt she'd been hit by a bus.
"It's not fair to the people in the trial," she said.
"I know, honey," he replied. "I know. I'm a total failure. Believe me, I've even thought about shooting myself."
"Don't be silly,"
she said, and started to cry again. After Hoppy had left, Millie couldn't sleep. At midnight, she went down to the party room for a snack. She found Nicholas alone. "Why are you up so late?" he asked. "You look troubled."
"I am. Can you help me, Nicholas?"
"I'll try." She told him everything. Nicholas suspected a scam, but didn't tell Millie that. She promised to do nothing until they spoke again. He went to his room and rang Marlee. In court on Saturday, Cable decided to start with a bit of action. His witness was a Dr. Olney, who'd done research on laboratory mice. He had a video of the mice. Over some years, the mice had been given huge doses of cigarette smoke. Not one had developed lung cancer. Hoppy was in court, listening. He'd promised Millie that he'd come to show his support. Derek sat at the back and continued to plot. Ricky Coleman's husband was also in court. So were the families of some of the other jurors. Marlee had been working since 6 on Saturday morning. She called newspaper reporters, the police, FBI information lines, and government information services. She soon decided that the whole Hoppy affair was a scam arranged by Fitch. Fitch arrived for a meeting with Marlee at 10. Earlier that morning, he'd received a report on the investigations into Claire Clement. Before she arrived in Lawrence in the summer of 1988, she hadn't existed. While in Lawrence, she made no long-distance phone calls. After she left Lawrence, the trail led nowhere. She'd probably changed her identity. Whoever she was smart.
"We've got problems with Ricky Coleman," said Marlee. "Nicholas thinks she wants a big verdict."
Without comment, Fitch handed Marlee a piece of paper.
"So she was pregnant? You're sure this is her?"
"Positive."
"You have nothing on Herman Grimes?"
"Nothing," replied Fitch. "Nicholas will have to deal with him. He's getting paid for it. If there's a problem, can't you get him removed?"
"We're thinking about it."
Fitch shook his head in amazement. "Do you realize what you're doing?"
"I think so. That's all for now, Fitch. I have work to do."
Later that day, Marlee received a call from an FBI agent in Biloxi called Madden. He confirmed that Nitchman, Napier, and Cristano weren't FBI agents, and he'd love to talk to them. Marlee said she'd try to arrange a meeting. At 3 on Saturday afternoon, the defense finished. The jurors were free to go. There would be trips to a football match or movie theater arranged for Saturday night, followed by personal visits. On Sunday, the jurors could go to church, and in the evening there would be more personal visits. Millie had no interest in movies, and certainly none in football. Hoppy arrived with some food, which they ate slowly. After dinner, they talked about their problems again. There were more tears and more apologies. Finally, Millie confessed that she'd told Nicholas everything. He could be trusted, she said. At 10:30, Nicholas, back from the football game, visited Millie's room. He explained to Hoppy and Millie that the whole thing was a scam. A close friend had made phone calls which confirmed that Napier, Nitchman, and Cristano weren't government agents, and that KLX Property Group didn't exist. Hoppy had been tricked. At first, Hoppy felt even more stupid. Then he had questions. What did it mean? Was it good news or bad? "What about the tape," he asked, "of me and Jimmy Hull Moke?" "I'm not worried about it," Nicholas said confidently. "The tape was obtained illegally. Forget it." What sweet words. "You're serious?" "Yes, Hoppy. The tape will never be played again." Millie leaned over and kissed Hoppy. This time, her tears were of joy. On Sunday morning, some of the jurors went to church. Hoppy went to his office at 10. He'd called Napier at 8 on Sunday morning with the news that he had important developments to discuss. He said he'd managed to persuade his wife, and she was influencing other jurors. Napier called Cristano, who called Fitch. Fitch was delighted and authorized the meeting. Napier and Nitchman arrived in Hoppy's office at 11. Hoppy was making coffee. He started talking to his visitors. Another guest quietly entered the building through the front door, which Hoppy had left unlocked. He knocked on Hoppy's door and opened it. "Agent Alan Madden, FBI," he said, showing his badge. Napier and Nitchman went pale as their hearts stopped. "Well, the FBI is already here," said Hoppy, acting perfectly, looking at Madden, then the other two, then Madden. "You guys don't know each other?" "FBI," Madden said. "Show me your identification." "I can explain," Nitchman said, his voice higher than normal. "You see, we're not really FBI agents. We're private investigators and, well—" "What?" screamed Hoppy. "You've been telling me for 10 days that you're FBI agents. What's going on here?" "Who are you?" Madden asked the two men. There was no response. He took out a gun and searched them. Then he led them from the building, where another FBI agent was waiting. They got into a car and drove away. In the car, Napier and Nitchman invented a story. They had been hired to investigate some real estate. One thing led to another, and their boss had made them pretend to be FBI agents. No harm done, really. Madden was a young agent and thought it was a minor crime. He gave them a lecture about pretending to be FBI officers and told them to stay out of Mississippi. When Fitch heard the story, he was so angry that he broke a lamp. He sent Pang to fetch the two men. 3 hours later, Napier and Nitchman were sitting in a room next to Fitch's office with Cristano. "Start at the beginning," he said. "I want to hear every word." They remembered nearly everything. After they'd left, Fitch sat and thought. Hoppy would tell Millie tonight. Millie would be lost as a defense juror. In fact, she would probably go right over to the other side and want billions of dollars for the poor widow Wood. Marlee could rescue the situation. Only Marlee. Chapter 13. Closing Speeches. Beverly Monk had some information. She'd managed to trace a friend of Claire's, Phoebe. When she called Phoebe, she found out that Phoebe had also received a call from someone pretending to be Jeff Kerr. She knew it wasn't, but had spoken to him anyway. She hadn't seen Claire Clement in 4 years. Beverly told Phoebe that she wanted to contact Claire again. Phoebe told her Claire's real name.
It was Brant. Gabrielle Brant. She was from Columbia, Missouri. She had a boyfriend who was crazy, and so she changed her name and left town. I think her father's dead. Her mother was a professor at the local university. Is she still there? I have no idea. I'll try to find her through her mom. Thanks, Phoebe.
Beverly took an hour trying to reach Swanson on the phone to sell him this information. After checking with Fitch, Swanson offered her $2,500. They bargained for 10 minutes and finally settled on $4,000 in cash. Swanson immediately flew to New York, arrived at dusk, and called Beverly's roommate, who told him that she might be at a party. He called the pizzeria where she worked and was told that she'd been dismissed. He drank coffee, made phone calls, and waited. Marlee wanted one more meeting with Fitch. Fitch could have kissed her feet when he saw her. He decided to tell her everything about Hoppy and Millie and the scam which had gone wrong. Nicholas must talk to Millie immediately, before she spoke to the other jurors. What would she do when she learned the truth? It would be a disaster, no question about it. Marlee listened without reacting as Fitch told the story. It amused her to see Fitch sweat. "I think we should get her off the jury," Fitch declared when he was finished.
Relax, Fitch. Nicholas and Millie are quite close. Millie will vote the way he wants.
Fitch tried to smile. "Just out of curiosity, how many votes do we have right now?"
9. Look, Fitch, you're worrying too much. You've paid your money. You've got the best. Now relax and wait for your verdict. It's in very good hands.
Will we get all 12?
Nicholas is determined to get them all.
Out of the building, Fitch was almost dancing. Jose had never seen his boss so happy. Wendell Rohr and Durwood Cable were each practicing their closing speeches. In a conference room, in front of 7 lawyers, Wendell Rohr walked forward and back, speaking softly, with carefully chosen words to his jury. His voice was warm and rich, filled with sympathy one minute and hard words for the tobacco companies the next. He lectured and persuaded. He was funny and he was angry. He finished in 51 minutes. The closing speech had to be an hour or less. Judge Harkin's orders. The comments from his audience were tough. Rohr agreed to perform again. It had to be perfect. Victory was so close. Cable had a larger audience. He was videotaped so he could watch himself. He was determined to do it in half an hour. The jury would like that. Rohr would no doubt go on for longer. Cable delivered his closing speech, then watched the video, again and again throughout Sunday afternoon and into the night. By the time Fitch arrived at the beach house, he was his normal pessimistic self again. The 4 CEOs were waiting, having just finished a fine meal. Jankel was drunk. Fitch was questioned about the $2 million he'd required from each of them. He explained that the defense had a very large, unplanned expense. "Do you have the votes, Fitch?" asked one of the CEOs. "I believe I do. The verdict has been purchased." His voice held a touch of pride. "How?" "I'll never tell," Fitch said coolly. "The details are not important." They stared at him. 8 times they'd been to the edge of disaster, and each time Rankin Fitch had saved them. Now he'd done it again. "How much?" Jankel demanded. $10 million. I've purchased the verdict for $10 million. That's all I'll say. Of course, nothing is guaranteed. You never know until the jury comes back." Well, it ought to be guaranteed at a price of $10 million, but the CEOs said nothing. There was a general feeling among the jurors that Sunday night would be their last in sequestration. The mood was more relaxed, and many of the jurors packed up their things. It was the third night of personal visits. Marley and Nicholas ate pizza in his room and discussed their plans. Marley left at 9. Nicholas went to see Hoppy and Millie. They were full of thanks. Millie was worried about staying on the jury. She'd discussed it with Hoppy and didn't feel she could be fair after what had happened. Nicholas had anticipated this and wanted Millie to stay on the jury. If she told Judge Harkin what had happened, then the judge would probably order the trial to be held again. "It's our job, Millie," Nicholas said. "We've been chosen to decide this case. It's our responsibility to reach a verdict." Millie agreed. Her new friend Nicholas made everything easier. After failing to meet with Cable, Derek had to deal with Cleve. They met in the Nugget Casino on Sunday night and drank a beer. Cleve gave Derek a packet containing $15,000. The other $10,000 would be paid after the verdict, as long as Angel voted for the plaintiff. After Cleve had left, Derek stayed behind to gamble. He bet heavily. The beers kept coming. Down to $7,000. He wanted to cry. But his luck changed, and he left the casino with nearly $11,000. Although it was too late for personal visits, he got in his car and started to drive to the Siesta Motel. Soon he noticed blue lights behind him. He stopped the car. "Have you been drinking?" asked a policeman. Derek was taken to jail. A 5-hour stay was automatic for drunk drivers. He couldn't phone Angel from jail, but he had to reach her before she left for court. At 5:30 on Monday morning, Marvis arrived at the police station to collect Derek. Derek gave his brother $200 and borrowed his car. He raced to the Siesta Motel and tried to wake Angel by throwing stones at her window. "Don't move," said a voice behind him. Derek turned to see Chuck, one of the deputies, with a gun. "Hands up!" Derek was taken to jail for the second time that night. Angel slept through it all. On Monday morning, while Nicholas helped Mrs. Grimes prepare Herman's breakfast, he dropped 4 small tablets into Herman's coffee. They wouldn't kill him. Herman would be sick for 4 hours, then recover completely. Nicholas carried their breakfast back to the Grimes' room. Mrs. Grimes thanked him. Such a nice young man. The drama started half an hour later. The door to the Grimes' room was open, and Herman was bent double on the bathroom floor. Lou Dell ran to the phone and rang the emergency services. Nicholas said to Ricky that maybe it was a heart attack. Herman had had one 6 years ago. The ambulance arrived, and Herman was taken away. In the confusion, Nicholas managed to knock over the coffee cup. Lou Dell called Judge Harkin. Pinex shares opened high on Monday morning. There was good news coming out of Biloxi, though no one knew the source. All tobacco shares rose in early heavy trading. Judge Harkin arrived in court at 9:30. He'd been arguing with Rohr and Cable. Cable wanted a new trial after the loss of another juror, but the judge didn't agree. Fitch sat in amazement. How do you give someone a heart attack? Was Marley capable of poisoning a blind man? Thank God she was on his side. Judge Harkin told the jurors that Herman wasn't in danger. Everyone was very relieved, and Shine Royce took Herman's place. The judge asked Wendell Rohr to start his closing speech. It went well, lasting 48 minutes, and he ended it with some figures. You could value Jacob Wood's life at $1 million. Add some other damages, and the total sum that the family were due was $2 million. But there was also the role of punitive damages. How do you punish a company that has $800 million in cash? He was careful not to suggest a figure. In response, Durwood Cable took slightly more than half an hour to dismiss the idea that you should give millions to the family of a man who'd smoked for 35 years. It was just a means of getting money. He appealed to the jury's sense of fairness, asking them to judge the case on facts, not emotions. He had the jury's complete attention. The judge told the jury that the case was now for them to decide. He asked them to select a new foreman in place of Herman Grimes. As the jury left, Nicholas turned and looked at Fitch. Fitch nodded. Fitch left the court and went to his office. Marley phoned.
Fitch, I have new transfer instructions for the money.
She wanted it sent to a bank in Panama City.
You have 20 minutes, Fitch. The jury is eating lunch. If I don't have confirmation by 12:30, then the deal's off and Nicholas will change direction.
Within 10 minutes, the money was on its way. He received confirmation by fax. At 12:20, Marley called her banker in Panama, who confirmed receipt of $10 million. Marley was in a motel room 10 kilometers away with a fax machine. After 5 minutes, she instructed the same banker to transfer the money to a bank in the Cayman Islands. Nicholas called at 12:30 to learn that the money was safe. Marley went straight to the airport, where a small plane was waiting. Swanson had waited patiently for Beverly. She'd rung him at 3:30 a.m. Monday morning, obviously drunk, and arranged to meet him at 7 a.m. in the coffee shop. She was 4 hours late and looked drugged, but Swanson could have kissed her.
Have you got the money?
There was no doubt what the money would be spent on. Yes, but tell me about Claire. Beverly gave him the information she'd got from Phoebe.
Now give me the money,
she said. Swanson handed her the envelope. Thanks, he said, and disappeared. He finally reached Fitch on the phone just after 1. By then, Swanson was on his way to Missouri. Chapter 14. The Verdict. In the jury room, they were ready to do what they'd been dreaming about all month. They took their places and stared at the empty seat at the end of the table, the one that Herman had occupied. Guess we need a new foreman, said Jerry.
And I think it should be Nicholas,
Millie added quickly. There wasn't any doubt about who the new foreman would be. No one else wanted the job, and Nicholas seemed to know as much about the trial as the lawyers. Nicholas started. Judge Harkin wants us to consider all the evidence, including the reports, before we start voting, he said. I'm ready to vote now, said Lonnie Shaver. Not so fast, said Nicholas. This is a very complicated case, and it would be wrong to rush things.
We are not going to read all that stuff, are we?
Asked Sylvia. I have an idea, said Nicholas. We'll each take a report, read it fast, and then make a summary for everyone else. They started work. Marley's flight from Biloxi to Georgetown, Grand Cayman took 90 minutes. She went through customs with a new passport, which showed her to be Lane McRoland, a Canadian. She took a taxi to the Royal Swiss Trust Bank. The tropical air was warm, but Marley hardly noticed. She was greeted by a receptionist, and within minutes had met a young man named Marcus. They'd spoken many times on the phone. The money had arrived, he told her. In his office, a secretary brought coffee, and Marley ordered a sandwich. Pinex shares were still strong when Marley made her first trade. She sold 50,000 shares in Pinex at $79, using a system which was popular with experienced investors. If the price of shares was going to fall, trading rules allowed them to be sold first at the higher price, then purchased later at the lower one. With $10 million in cash, Marley would be allowed to sell approximately $20 million worth of shares. Later, she'd buy them back, and if their price had fallen, she'd make a profit on the difference in price. Marcus confirmed the trade, and Marley then sold shares in 2 other Big Four companies, and then more in Pinex. She paused and instructed Marcus to watch Pinex closely. She'd just sold 110,000 shares and was worried about the effect on Wall Street. "I think it's safe now," said Marcus, who'd been watching the share price closely for 2 weeks.
"Sell 50,000 more,"
she said without hesitation. She was very calm. Marcus's heart missed a beat, then he completed the trade.
"That's approximately $22 million, Ms. McRoland. I think we should stop. More sales will need approval from my superior. One question. When do you anticipate movement on these shares?" "Tomorrow, early. If you want your other clients to think you're really smart, then you should suggest that they follow my example."
Marcus sent for a company car to take Marley to her hotel. Marley's present seemed under control, but her past was being discovered. At the University of Missouri, records were found of a Dr. Evelyn Y. Brandt. She'd died in 1987, age 56, and left everything to her daughter Gabrielle, age 21. Gabrielle had received nearly $200,000. On the death certificate, it stated that Dr. Brandt had died of lung cancer. By the time Fitch was told this, they knew more. Dr. Brandt's husband, Dr. Peter Brandt, had died in 1981 at the age of 52, leaving everything to his dear wife Evelyn and his daughter Gabrielle. He'd also died of lung cancer. Fitch took the telephone call from Swanson alone, with the door locked. At first, he was too shocked to react. Both of Marley's parents had died of lung cancer? He wrote it down on a yellow pad as if he could analyze it, as if he could somehow make it fit in with her promise to deliver a verdict. He closed his eyes and rubbed his head. He must stay calm. There was nothing he could do to stop the jury's discussions. They were in there with deputies by the door. Fitch made a list of possible things he could do, all of which would be dangerous, illegal, and would fail. He slowly rose to his feet and took the glass lamp in both hands. Conrad and Pang were standing outside and heard a crash as the lamp hit the wall. Fitch shouted something about the money. Then the desk hit the wall. "Find the girl!" he screamed. "Find the girl!" After the period of forced concentration, Nicholas decided that some debate was needed. He started by summarizing a report on the state of Jacob Wood's lungs. His audience was bored.
"I have an idea,"
Ricky Coleman said.
"Let's see if we can all agree that cigarettes cause lung cancer."
"Fine with me," said Nicholas. "Raise your hands if you believe that cigarettes cause lung cancer." 12 hands went up in the air. "Who thinks nicotine is addictive?" Another yes vote. "Let's keep united, folks," Nicholas said. "It's really important that we walk out of here voting the same way." Most of the jurors had heard him say this before. The legal reasons weren't clear, but they believed him anyway. They continued to work through the reports. They left the room to smoke and to stretch. Lou Dell and 2 deputies guarded the door. After another juror had summarized a report on the contents of cigarette smoke, Lonnie Shaver spoke. "I thought we decided that cigarette smoke was harmful." He looked at Nicholas. "I say we get on with the voting. I'll go first." He took a deep breath, and everyone turned to watch him. "My position is easy. I believe cigarettes kill. That's why I leave them alone. Nobody can force you to smoke, but if you do, you'll suffer the consequences. Don't smoke for 30 years and then expect me to make you rich. These crazy lawsuits need to be stopped."
"Do you know when I started smoking?"
said Angel Weiss.
"I remember the exact day. I was 13, and I saw this really good-looking guy, all smiles, perfect teeth, with a beautiful girl on his arm and a cigarette in one hand. What great fun, I thought. That's the good life. So I went home, got my money, and bought a pack of cigarettes. Don't try and tell me anyone can give up. I'm addicted.
Lonnie said nothing. The arguments continued, then the jury returned to their reading. At 5 o'clock, Judge Harkin called them back. "You've had the case for 5 hours. I'd like to know if you're making progress." Nicholas stood up. "I think so, Your Honor. We're determined to finish and have a verdict sometime tonight." "Wonderful. Thank you. Dinner is on the way. I'll be in my chambers if you need me." Dinner was over at 6:30, and the jury agreed to vote. "Are you willing to hold Pinex responsible for the death of Jacob Wood?" asked Nicholas. 4 jurors voted yes, 4 no, the rest weren't sure. "I think it's time for you to say what you think," Lonnie said to Nicholas. "Okay," he said. He'd practiced this speech and spoke very persuasively. "I'm certain that cigarettes are dangerous. They kill 400,000 people a year, and they're full of nicotine. I think cigarettes killed Jacob Wood, and I am also certain that tobacco companies lie and cheat and do everything in their power to persuade kids to smoke. They are selfish and greedy and should be punished." Ricky Coleman and Millie Dupree felt like clapping. "You want punitive damages?" asked Jerry. "The verdict means nothing if it's not significant. It has to be huge." They went round the table again. 7 for the plaintiff, 3 for the defense.
"How much money do you have in mind for Celeste Wood?"
asked Ricky. $1 billion. Mouths fell open. "That's ridiculous," said Lonnie. At that moment, most of the other jurors agreed. The discussions continued. Finally, they agreed 10 votes to 2 that Celeste Wood should receive $2 million in actual damages. After the mention of $1 billion, $2 million seemed a very small amount. Again, they voted 10 to 2 for punitive damages. "Any idea of how much?" asked Nicholas. "I have an idea," said Jerry. "Get everyone to write down their amounts on a piece of paper, then add them up and divide by 10. That way we'll see what the average is." The jurors quickly wrote their numbers on pieces of paper. Nicholas slowly unfolded each piece of paper and called the numbers out to Millie, who wrote them down. 1 billion, 1 million, 50 million, 10 million, 1 billion, 1 million, 5 million, 500 million, 1 billion, and 2 million. Millie did the math.
"The average is 356,900,000.
Lonnie jumped to his feet. "You're crazy," he said, and left the room, banging the door behind him. Another juror looked shocked. "I can't do this. I'm retired, okay? I have enough money, but I can't understand these figures." "These numbers are real," Nicholas said, "and the company is very rich. It has $800 million in cash. We've got to think big or they won't take any notice."
"What will happen to the tobacco industry if we bring back a big verdict like this?"
asked Angel. "There'll be a lot of action. The industry will have to examine their advertising plans again. They'll go to the government and demand special laws. But I suspect they'll get less and less help. The industry will never be the same," Nicholas answered. "We need to decide on an amount, folks, if we want to go home." "I have an idea," said Jerry. "Let's take it up to 400 million. Half their cash." "Count the votes," said Nicholas. 9 hands went up. He filled in the verdict form and made everyone sign it. Lonnie returned. "We've come to a verdict, Lonnie." "What a surprise. How much?" $2 million and $400 million. Care to join us?" "Hell no," answered Lonnie. Nicholas walked to the door and asked Lou Dell to inform Judge Harkin that his jury was ready. While they waited, Lonnie whispered to Nicholas, "Is there any way I can say that I didn't agree?" He was more nervous than angry. "Sure, don't worry. The judge will ask each of us if this is our verdict. When he asks you, make sure everyone knows you don't agree with it." "Thanks." Chapter 15. Fitch's Surprise. Lou Dell delivered a note from Nicholas to the judge. In it, Nicholas asked for a deputy to accompany him from the courthouse as soon as the trial was finished. He said he was scared. The judge gave the necessary instructions and then went into the courtroom. The atmosphere was full of anticipation. Lawyers were walking around, nervous and wild-eyed. It was almost 8 o'clock. "I have been informed that the jury has reached a verdict," Harkin said loudly. "Please bring in the jury." They came in looking serious. Lou Dell took the verdict form from Nicholas and handed it to the judge. His face showed no reaction to the extraordinary news he was holding. He was very shocked, but there was nothing he could do. It was technically correct. There would be action to reduce it later on, but he couldn't do anything now. He gave it back to Lou Dell, who asked Nicholas to read it. "We, the jury, find in favor of the plaintiff, Celeste Wood, and grant her damages of $2 million. Wendell Rohr and his lawyers breathed a huge sigh of relief. They'd just made history. But the jury wasn't finished. "And we, the jury, find in favor of the plaintiff, Celeste Wood, and grant punitive damages of $400 million. Cable sank down into his chair as if he'd been shot. The other defense lawyers stared at the jury box, mouths open, eyes wide in total disbelief. "Oh, my God," one of them said. Rohr was all smiles as he put his arm around Celeste Wood, who'd started crying. The other lawyers with Rohr congratulated each other. Oh, the thrill of victory, the thought of sharing 40% of this verdict. "Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Judge Harkin said, "I am going to ask each of you individually if you voted in favor of this verdict." "I did," answered Nicholas Easter and 6 others. When it came to Lonnie, he said loudly, "No, Your Honor, I did not. I disagree with this verdict entirely." 2 more jurors said they hadn't voted for the verdict, but the final 2, Sylvia and Jerry, stated they'd supported it. The vote was 9-3. Nicholas was extremely worried that Fitch wasn't in court. How much did he now know? Nicholas wanted to get out of the courtroom and leave town. The judge thanked the jury and told them that they couldn't tell anyone about the discussions they'd had. They were dismissed. Fitch was watching from the viewing room in his office. He was alone. All the jury consultants had been dismissed. He'd discussed what he could do with Swanson. They could kidnap Easter, but he wouldn't talk, and they'd go to jail for it. They decided to follow him, hoping he'd lead them to Marley. But what could they do if they found her? They couldn't report her to the police. Fitch was trapped, whatever he did. Nicholas left court quickly without saying goodbye to anyone. At the back entrance, the sheriff was waiting for him in his car. "Judge said you needed some help." Nicholas directed him to a large apartment building north of town and got out, thanking the sheriff. He then got in a new rental car that Marley had left there 2 days ago and drove to Hattiesburg, where a private plane was waiting. He arrived in Georgetown with new Canadian papers. Marley met him at the airport. They kissed. "Have you heard?" he asked.
"Sure, it's all over CNN," she said. "Was that the best you could do?"
she asked with a laugh. They kissed again. They went to the beach and sat in the sand alone as the waves washed across their feet. What a moment it was. Their 4-year operation was over. Their plans had finally worked. Perfectly. Marlee went alone to the Royal Swiss Trust Bank the following day. Marcus greeted her in his office.
Your trade in Pinex shares seems to have been extremely successful. I've been on the phone to New York, and things are really confused. The verdict has surprised everyone. Except you, I guess.
There were so many questions he wanted to ask, but he knew there would be no answers.
They might stop trading for a day or two.
He looked at his computer and spoke to someone in New York.
They're offering Pinex shares at $50.
2 minutes passed. His eyes never left the computer screen.
They're at 45 now. Yes or no? No. What about the others?
Marcus's fingers danced across the keyboard.
The entire tobacco industry is down. Check Pinex again,
Marlee said.
Still falling. 42, with a few small buyers. Buy 20,000 shares at 42.
A few seconds passed before he said, confirmed. The Marlee-Nicholas team had just made $740,000, less the bank's fees. She went on buying slowly. The quick kill was happening. She'd planned this very carefully, and she'd never have another opportunity. A few minutes before noon, with the market still very upset, she'd finished. Marcus wiped his forehead.
Not a bad morning, Ms. McRoland. You've made over $8 million, less fees. I want the money transferred to a bank in Zurich.
She handed him written instructions.
Immediately, please.
She packed quickly. Then Nicholas and Marlee flew first class to Miami, where they waited 2 hours and flew on to Amsterdam. They watched the news in the plane. Wall Street was going round in circles. Experts were speaking everywhere. Judge Harkin had no comment. Cable couldn't be found, but Rohr finally came out of his office and took the credit for the victory. From Amsterdam, they flew to Geneva, where they rented a hotel apartment for a month. Fitch left Biloxi 3 days after the verdict. His future as director of the fund was in doubt, but his firm had plenty of other work. Not as well paid as the fund, however. A week after the verdict, he met with Luther Vandermeer and D. Martin Jankel in New York and confessed every detail of his deal with Marlee. It wasn't a pleasant meeting. He also discussed with other New York lawyers the best way of attacking the verdict. The fact that Easter had disappeared immediately was suspicious. Herman Grimes had agreed to release his medical records, which showed that he'd been fit and healthy until that morning. He remembered an odd taste to his coffee. Then he was on the floor. Colonel Frank Herrera had already given a sworn statement which said that the magazines under his bed weren't his. The mystery surrounding the verdict increased. The New York lawyers didn't know about the Marlee deal. They never would. Cable was planning to ask permission to interview all the jurors, an idea that Judge Harkin seemed to like. How else could they find out what had happened in there? Lonnie Shaver was particularly anxious to talk. He'd received his promotion and was ready to defend American business. The appeal would be long and difficult. Rohr's future was filled with opportunity. Extra staff were employed just to answer the phone calls from other lawyers and possible victims. Wall Street seemed more sympathetic to Rohr than to the tobacco industry. The share prices stayed low. Anti-smoking groups openly predicted the bankruptcy and eventual death of the tobacco industry. 6 weeks after he left Biloxi, Fitch was eating lunch alone in a tiny Indian restaurant near DuPont Circle in Washington. It was snowing outside. She appeared from nowhere.
"Hi, Fitch,"
she said, and he dropped his spoon. "What are you doing here?" he said without moving his lips. He remembered how pretty she was. Her hair seemed shorter.
Just came to say hello.
You've said it.
And the money is being returned to you as we speak. I'm transferring it back to your account. All $10 million, Fitch.
He could think of no quick response. He was looking at the lovely face of the only person who'd ever beaten him. How kind of you, he said.
I started to give it away, you know, to some of the anti-smoking groups, but we decided against it.
How's Nicholas?
He's fine.
Why are you returning it?
It's not mine. I never planned to keep the money. I just wanted to borrow it. Tell me, Fitch, did you find Gabrielle?
Yes, we did.
And her parents?
We know where they are.
Does it make more sense now?
It makes more sense, yes.
They were both wonderful people. They were intelligent and energetic and loved life. They both got addicted to cigarettes in college, and I watched them fight their habit until they died. They died terrible deaths, Fitch. I was their only child. My mother died at home on the sofa because she couldn't walk to her bedroom.
She paused, but her eyes were surprisingly clear. It must have been sad, but Fitch could feel no sympathy. When did you start this operation?
Graduate school. I studied finance, thought about law, and then I dated a lawyer and heard stories of tobacco litigation. The idea grew.
An amazing idea.
Thanks, Fitch. From you, that's a nice thing to hear.
Are you finished with us?
No. We'll watch the appeal closely. And if your lawyers go too far attacking the verdict, then I've got copies of the bank transfers. Be careful, Fitch. We're proud of that verdict, and we're always watching. And remember, Fitch, next time you go to trial, we'll be there.